Howdy folks, welcome back to Empyrion Academy. Today's lesson is part 2 of the SV tutorial, and today we're going to look at the design and build of small vessels. And the first thing you want to do before you even start designing or building anything is you want to decide what you want your ship to do, because small vessels have a lot of different functions, a lot of different things they can do. And so I would classify them as having 4 different main features, and those would be agility or speed, maneuverability, and the second would be economy, that is being cheap and not expensive to build or run. And the third is combat ability, including offense and defense. And the fourth would be capacity, and that includes cargo and people and all that stuff. Now you can optimize a build for any 2 of these, but you end up doing so beyond a certain point at the expense of the others. And so the best ship for any specific purpose is going to be a specialized ship. And a generalized ship may be okay at all of these different things, but it's not going to be as good as one that you build special for the purpose. So you will likely want to build something that's more specialized if you care about that. To make sense of this, let's consider a few different scenarios. For example, early on in the game, you might want a ship that's very cheap on fuel because you don't have much for resources, and you just want to scout around, fly around the planet looking for mineral deposits, and you want to maybe stop and mine some of them, and you're not really going to do any combat, you're not going to shoot at anything or be shot at. And in single player, you can choose this because the AI will not actively come after you and chase you down and all that stuff. So that kind of ship would only need very minimal engines and parts, and you don't really need guns or armor, and you can save a lot on fuel. So you would have a little scout like that. And a small fighter can also be built that's just a little bit bigger, adding on basically a gun and an ammo box, and you could use it for hunting wildlife and maybe taking out drones pretty easily. So a small ship can be one of those 2 things usually. And if you want to start attacking the POIs and using a ship to remove the turrets, then you'll obviously want some better weapons so that you're not in the line of fire for so long as you're taking them out. And if you're a good pilot, you can actually dodge the incoming shots from the turrets, and you would want a ship that's fast and maneuverable. And if you're not such a good pilot, then you will probably want to put more armor on your ship, and this will make it more expensive to build and to run, but should keep you safer if, like I said, if you are not as good of a pilot and you can't count on being able to dodge all the incoming shots. And you also want to consider, for combat considerations, you also want to think about if you're in PvP, if your ship is going to be used on a multiplayer server against other humans where they can damage your ship. They can and will go directly after you and chase you down and follow you, and so you can't simply decide, I'm taking too much damage, I'm going to walk away and not be shot anymore, like you can in single player. So in PvP, you will want to make different considerations for your armor and obviously make a better defended ship. Now, the other main type of ship that I would consider being made is the dropship type of thing, where you and or a bunch of friends would want to jump in your ship and fly to either a moon or take off from a CV in orbit and land on a planet, and then spend a considerable amount of time on that planet, and your ship would be there for all of your support, like your life support, your oxygen, all of your storage, all of your food storage, and all those kinds of things. So that would be a very large ship, and probably the type you can walk inside of and do things inside the ship. Now, with all of that out of the way, for your first ship, what you should probably do is start out with something small, just so that you can get the hang of things. And it's also a good idea to work in creative mode so that you can build without worrying about resources and being attacked and all kinds of other distractions. So to get all of your blocks and materials in creative mode, you want to press H to bring up the creative menu. And you'll want to grab the parts that you need. So you want to grab a starter block, and then if you click on the small vessel here, it'll filter out everything that you don't need. And so you will want a core and a cockpit. Choose any one of the cockpits, and an RCS, and 6 thrusters at least, and a fuel tank and a generator. If you're building in creative mode, you can also freeze time so that you don't have to worry about day-night cycles. So if you hit escape, this little icon here, debug options, you can change the speed time to 0, and then you can change the time of day to whatever time you like. So that, like I said, you can get the lighting that you prefer, and you don't have to worry about what you're seeing. And the other option that you can do is you can build in space, and that's in creative mode. You can go to space as easily as you like. You just type sector and then the name of the planet, which would be Akua or Omicron or whichever one you want to go to. Now that we've chosen our building location, we can start out by dropping a starter block, and you'll just want to drop that anywhere. Now if you want to build underneath the ship, what you can do is in your console you can enter God mode, and that is if you're building on land and you want to get underneath the ship and you don't collide with anything anymore. So if you're building on the ground or you're building under a base or whatever and you want to reach the underside of the ship, you can easily do that in creative mode, which is another reason to do that. You can actually use that in survival mode as well, as if you're not on a server. And the G key will toggle that flight mode back on and off. So as you see now, I'm not going through objects anymore. And to remove blocks, you can hold your run key, which is typically shift and right click to remove whatever block is under the cursor. And you should note that you do not have to leave the core where it is. You can actually move the core to anywhere, and it will still function just as well. So you can remove this, and you can put your core somewhere else, which usually is an easy way to build, since you don't want your core often in the very, very front of the ship or whatever, and a lot of people start building from the front. So the other items that you need in order to have a functional ship is you need a cockpit, and you need a generator to generate your power, and you need a fuel tank. We'll put all of these parts on, and you need an RCS, which helps your ship turn. So we can put that in here. And in order to go in all 6 directions, you need 6 thrusters. Now what you can do is you can actually get away with putting on a single thruster, and your ship will still actually function, but it will only be able to thrust forward, and so you won't be able to slow yourself down or anything. With an RCS you can turn the ship, and so you can still steer it, but I highly recommend not doing that unless it's an absolute emergency. So that should not be a principle of ship design, to use a single engine. And you do want them in all 6 directions. That includes up, down, left, and right. Even if you're never leaving the atmosphere, you still do want a thruster that can push you downward, because that will allow the ship to balance itself properly. It will not tend to fly very well without the engines in all 6 directions. So we'll put all 6 of those on. So let's grab some fuel from our creative menu, and we will put it in our fuel tank. And this is a basic, bare minimum functioning ship, as you see here. Now you can add blocks onto the outside and finish off your creation and make it look decent. And so there are various types of blocks, and with any of these blocks you can right click and it'll bring up the menu to select the sub shapes. And so you can select different types of windows, you can select different types of railings, you can select again different types of trusses and wings. There are various wings, and it will show you the different sizes as well. And the shutter doors, and also the thrusters have slanted and the full block thrusters. There are different cargo boxes, and with these cargo boxes, the smaller ones do have more cargo space per block. As you see here, you have 7 times 5, you have 35 in that block, and you have 63 in this, so you are missing, you would have 7 in 2 block spaces if you put 2 of these together, but the trade-off is that you can actually put all of these in the same inventory, so it tends to be easier to sort through things and look through things when they're in this one. The landing gear also lets you select various pieces that you want to put on your ship, and some of them are different sizes than others. Whenever you're ready, you can make the rest of your ship by putting on a bunch of blocks. You select the shapes that you want and put them in the positions you want. I recommend the symmetry axis if you are doing an odd width of a ship, and you can throw on any extras like wings or that sort of thing too. And that's how you put together a functioning ship. Now if you want to access the bottom of it, as I showed before, you can go into God mode. Another thing you can do is once it's actually functional, you can lift it up and it will hover, and when you get out it will stay hovering, as you see here, for about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes, and then you can use that time to put things on the bottom of the ship like this. You can work on the bottom of the ship, so that gives you the time to do that. And there are also other parts that you can put on your ship, so let's get rid of these and we'll take a look at the other parts that you can put on. You have an oxygen tank and dispenser, which should have obvious purpose, but you should note that the oxygen tank you are always using, as I believe I pointed out in the first session, you are always using oxygen while you're in your ship, so unless you're going to be only using it short term, you will want to put oxygen tank on your ship. The shutter doors allow you to place an opening and open and close at will, and so it allows you to protect something with a variable opening like this. And the shutters do come in different sizes. Let's take a quick look. So they do come in various sizes, and so you can put larger shutter doors on your ship if you'd like, and you can even put them big enough that you can walk in and out of them. There's also a mobile constructor that you can put on your ship, and this does not have all of the templates that the large base constructor does have, but as you see here, you can make some food and some ammo, and not all of the blocks, but many of the small vessel blocks can be created. So it is nice for in the field repairs. It also functions as a large storage area, so you can actually put a bunch of cargo in here as well. And the other important extra that you might want to put on your ship is a fridge, and this obviously allows you to put your food in and keep the expire timers from going. And so you can put those anywhere in your ship. You just need to make sure to remember to leave your ship running if you have stuff in the fridge and you don't want it to expire. Another type of thruster you can put on your ship is the jet thruster, and these obviously look different from the other thrusters. They actually do function the same right now. There is no specific limitations to them or anything like that. They don't have to be used only in the atmosphere or anything. I'm not sure if that's going to change in the future, but for right now, like I said, they act exactly the same as all the other thrusters, except they take up quite a bit more space. There are a few things that you might expect to happen, but that do not happen as far as realism goes in this game. A lot of the physics is fairly realistic, but there are things that are not included at this point and may or may not be included in the future. And one of them is that you can put thrusters anywhere and RCS anywhere, and it does not matter. So you don't have to have your thrusters centered along the center of mass or anything like that. So if you were to put one giant thruster way back here at the very end of the ship, pointing downward, when it lifted the ship up, the ship would lift exactly the same way as it would if the thruster were placed anywhere else. This wouldn't cause like the back end to lift way up and the nose to stay where it is. So keep that in mind when building, because you can design things that otherwise you might not have been able to design if you were overly concerned with realism. And another thing that is not existent right now is structural integrity, which means that these blocks do not have to be connected. Your blocks do not have to be connected, and people have made some pretty cool looking ships using that, and so that you can have wings that are detached or nacelles that are detached or that sort of thing. And so as you see here, when you take off and you fly around, your ship will stay connected. All of the blocks will actually act as if they're connected. Another thing to consider with the thrusters is that you do want to keep them fairly balanced. They don't have to be exactly the same in all directions, but in opposite directions you do want to keep them fairly balanced. So you want forward and backward thrusters to be somewhat similar, and if they aren't, what will happen is you will end up with the ship getting off balance. Sometimes it will want to just flip itself over, or the one thruster will basically overpower the other one. To check your thrust values, you can go into the control panel. So you want to stand on your ship or go in the cockpit and press P, and then you're going to click this little I by the statistics, and it will open this window. This will show you your thrust in all different directions and also how much your RCS is doing. And the other thing you want to check and make sure of is not just that these are balanced, but that your thrust value pointing downward is enough to get you off of the planet. It needs to be higher than the gravity of whatever planet you're going to be on, which you can check in here. So 0.84 Gs, and some of them are up to 12 or 13 meters per second in game. So you do want to make sure that you have more than that for your thrust values. The other thing the control panel is good for is accessing your other parts. So as you see here, you can access your fuel tank. You can either click this access button or just double click on it and press P to go back, or click this little arrow to go back. And you can access all of your parts on your ship using the control panel. So you can bury all of your parts and still access them. You don't need to have them all exposed to the outside in order to reach them. The one exception to that is the oxygen station. You do need to be able to point at it in order to use the oxygen station. You can't just refill your oxygen from the cockpit. You don't need to have it sitting out like this completely exposed, and you can actually put shutter doors in front of it, or you can make it accessible through a small crack between blocks. But usually the shutter doors are an easier and more elegant solution to this problem. The other thing that does not need to be internal is the thrusters. You can actually have thrusters pointing into other blocks and they will still function just as well. They do not burn out other blocks or stop working or anything like that when they're pointing at other blocks. The one situation where this can be a problem for you is if your thruster is pointing right at your cockpit, because what happens is this little flame sprite or graphic comes into your cockpit and will show up in your vision while you're flying the ship. So if you see here, when this thruster fires, it actually shows up in your vision and can get annoying. Another part that people might want to build with realism concerns is the wings, and you should note that right now at this time they do not generate any lift or anything like that. They don't affect the flight characteristics of the plane in any way other than regular blocks do as far as adding mass to the ship. The other important parts you can put on your ships are weapons, obviously. And when you put weapons on, you'll need to supply them with ammo, and so you'll also need to remember to put on an ammo box somewhere on your ship. Otherwise, nobody's going to be able to use the weapons. Now, when you're building, you can build in several different ways. The way we built here was we started with the internal components and then built our way out. You can also build an outer shell and then hope to be able to fit your parts in. You might want to build a little bit bigger than you would expect just to leave yourself enough space so that you can put in your internal parts after you're done. You can also just start building front to back or back to front or that sort of thing and put in your parts as you need. And don't forget that there's no rule saying you can't undo and you can't take parts back off. The great thing about this building system is that you can unbuild and change things around if you don't like the way they're working out. And the most important thing you need to know to get started with building is to actually just get started. So if you want to become good at building, it's just like anything else where you'll want to just start, and your first builds will probably not be that spectacular, but you don't have to publish everything you do or keep everything you do, and you can keep practicing and see what you can come up with, and you'll start coming up with better ideas the more you practice at it. Okay, that is all the hints and tips we have for today, and I hope this turned out to be helpful and will get you started building your own SVs. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them in the comment section below. And thanks for watching.